What is going on, everyone? And in this video I'll be giving you my UFC Vegas 29 main and co-main event prediction for the upcoming event taking place June 19th, Saturday. Should be an average card. I think a lot of people aren't going to really know anyone on this card. Main event I'm looking really forward to: Korean Zombie taking on Dan Ige. I think it should be a firefight. You have the featherweight division is really on fire right now. A lot of great fighters in it. But before we go and talk about this event, we have to talk about the previous event and just go over the results real quick. So in the previous event, really good. Well, yeah, it was a really good event regardless. I think there's good action here and there. Some of the decisions, I think people were kind of snoozing through. I mean, obviously the lightweight fight between Brad Riddell and Drew Dober got a lot of people going. Really exciting for a lot of people. Crowd was a little hard on some of the fights, especially early in the prelims. A lot of I mean, you could really hear like the boos versus the cheers and the boos. Arizona was really going hardcore. So either way, it was a really good card. The main event, I mean the main card, we had the light heavyweight fight, Paul Craig taking on Jamal Hill. And for that fight, I mean, Paul Craig, he's one of those guys where you count him out, he snaps you in half. I feel like he can get knocked out by someone that really is able to not get taken down or get thrown into a horrible ground position. But he got caught in there. He had his arms just gets absolutely destroyed, and it was kind of like a late, his arms getting snapped in half, and they stopped it a little bit late, in my opinion. But regardless, Paul Craig, never count him out. He's one of those guys where he either does crazy stuff like that, or he'll just get absolutely destroyed. Bilal Muhammad taking on Damian Maia. Maia spamming in for the takedowns, insane amount of takedown attempts, and then obviously Muhammad was able to just hang in there, piece him up on the feet, not be the one gassing out, and just land the better strikes and not get taken down over and over again. So, obviously not the most exciting fight, but Muhammad did what he had to do to win. And obviously Maia, he's one of those fighters where it's just very predictable of what he's going to do. And then we had Leon Edwards taking on Nate Diaz in a fight where you obviously had Nate Diaz almost as if he won the fight, even though he didn't win the fight at all, and he was getting his ass completely destroyed. He was getting his ass beat the entire fight, aside from that last, minute where he was able to almost finish Leon Edwards. And then, he's like, if it was in the streets, if it was a real fight in the streets, I would have won the fight. If there was like 6 rounds to the fight, he might win the fight, which is why I think that his stock just keeps going up regardless if he gets his ass beat, because people want to see exciting fights. People want to see some guy talk their shit. They want to see the guy go out there and just keep doing crazy stuff in the octagon that a lot of people just aren't gonna do regardless. And he's over here bleeding from both sides of his head, all that scar tissue is opening up, and he's not really winning the fight, but people love it. People want to see it, and it's almost like no one's talking about Leon Edwards obviously going in there and kind of just dominating that fight outside of that last minute. They're all talking about Nate Diaz. People want to go watch the fight again just to see like what Nate Diaz did. And that's the exciting thing about Nate Diaz. But it's unfortunate for Leon Edwards because, he obviously did put on a great performance, but it almost gets overshadowed because of who he was fighting. And then, Nate Diaz still probably going to end up fighting someone next, make the most money and all that kind of stuff. So we have to see what happens with Nate Diaz, but obviously Leon Edwards put in some good work, and obviously he'll probably be fighting for the title soon and all that stuff. And then the co-main event of the evening, we had Brandon Moreno defeating Davison Figueiredo by a submission in round number 3. Very different fight. Figueiredo, he just really didn't seem like he could get off any offense. It wasn't. He did land some good strikes, but it just seemed like Moreno was just able to lock in that rear naked choke and was just able to take it over. He started grappling on top of him and just like spidered on him, and eventually got the submission. So it was just a very impressive win by Brandon Moreno. And Brandon Moreno, man, he's a sneaky guy in there. He's definitely, obviously being the first Mexican fighter to win the title, that's pretty exciting. So for him, I think he's gonna be tough to beat. He's very sneaky with those submissions. He can definitely take some shots, and he can definitely land some shots too. But yeah, he's a sneaky fighter. It's crazy to see where he's come from, and then obviously to get the title eventually. So that's an open division as well, because I think there's some exciting fights you can have for the flyweights. So we'll see what happens for it there. But I'm glad to see the little guys, the flyweight division definitely get the attention that I think that division needed back when Demetrius Johnson was the champion. And then the main event of the evening, we had Israel Adesanya defeating Marvin Vettori, and they had the 50-45. So according to a lot of people, I think it was a pretty dominant decision victory for him. Obviously, if you look at Marvin Vettori afterwards, he was kind of upset by the decision, but Was it like the most exciting thing you've ever seen in your life? I don't think so. I mean, significant strikes for Israel Adesanya, he had 96 to Marvin Vettori's 58. Total strikes 122 to 91. Takedowns 4 out of 14 for Marvin Vettori, and obviously Israel Adesanya had 0. So I think it's one of those things where he had to do a lot more with those takedowns. I would say it's probably, it's a closer fight. But like I said, I think Adesanya for the most part did well at defending takedowns, and when he got taken down, nothing really happened of significance. And obviously on the feet, I think Adesanya was landing some pretty good shots. And was it a 50-45 necessarily? I don't know about all that. I think it was maybe a little bit closer. I don't know. It wasn't the most exciting thing ever, but Adesanya did what he needs to do, at least for the judges. If you don't want to leave it to the judges, like Dana White always says, you got to knock these people out. So overall, pretty solid event. Main card is pretty cool. Obviously, like to see the names in there like Nate Diaz. You got Bilal Muhammad. You got a little Paul Craig action. Brandon Moreno getting the title. Israel Adesanya. So overall, pretty solid card. I think when we look at this next card, this is going to be, it could turn into a sleeper card because like I said, not a lot of big names on here aside from the main event. And I think a lot of casuals don't even know that this fight is even taking place. So we'll see what happens with this one. But let's go ahead and let's hop into the next card. So we go into the next card. And like always, I'll go ahead and scroll through all of my picks. And then we'll talk about the co-main event and the main event. So we move on into the co-main event of the evening, and we have Alexei Oleinik taking on Sergey Spivak. And for this fight, Alexei Oleinik, we kind of know what we're getting from him. Old guy, not an old guy, but like an old veteran in the game. 59 wins, 15 losses. He goes out there. He's fought the best guys. He's fought everyone. He's that guy who just hangs around. He's known for just snatching up these submissions when he's getting he's getting absolutely destroyed, and then the guy goes in for a takedown or slips up or something, and next thing you know, you have Oleinik taking this fight, winning it by a submission. Obviously, in his last fight against Chris Daukaus, he lost via TKO, and then in the fight before that, he got TKO'd by Derek Lewis. Big names though, Derek Lewis, obviously a power puncher. He won his fight via split decision against Fabricio Verdum. Won his fight against Maurice Green by submission, armbar. Lost to Walt Harris, who's had some trouble of late, by KO. Lost to Alistair Overeem by TKO. He beat Mark Hunt, Junior Alba. This guy's fighting everyone. He's lost to Curtis Blades. He's fought Travis Brown. This guy's fought everyone. So for him to be in the game still and just, either getting knocked out or winning a decision or whatever it may be, winning these submission victories just barely, it's just crazy. It's crazy to see, and it's one of those things where you can't count this guy out because, you're thinking like, okay, of course, Spivak's going to go in there. He's going to get the knockout. He's going to roll through this guy. And, that could definitely happen. I'm more inclined to think that's going to happen just because I think when you go for Oleinik, he's that underdog guy. If you're a bettor, obviously you might pick him just because he's going to do something. Hopefully, either he'll get knocked out or maybe he'll go for a submission. So the one thing for this one, obviously, Oleinik, he'll try to grind. He'll try to get in there. He can strike. Not the best striking in the world, but I think he kind of uses it to close that distance so he can get a takedown, so he can get you on the floor. His gas tank, not the best in the world either. He's one of those guys where, if he has to strike for too long, he starts getting a little bit tired. And obviously the grappling, if he's not able to wrap you up early on, he can definitely start tiring out if you're not going down and all that stuff. For Sergey Spivak, he's also not the best striker in the world. He's not one of these guys who's going out there and just rolling people over with one punch knockout like Derek Lewis. He can grapple as well. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend him grappling early on because obviously with Oleinik, he's going to try to take advantage of this. And I could definitely see Oleinik getting a submission early on if Spivak is like diving in for a takedown. I think that would be kind of silly. I would expect Spivak to keep this fight standing early on and try to just finish him in that first round. He needs to take it slow in the first round too. He can't be getting reckless. If he hurts Oleinik, he can't just dive in for a takedown or just try to grapple with him in any sort. I would expect Spivak to stay on him and just try to go for him. So for this fight, it's very sketchy. It's definitely not one of these fights where I think, you know, a minus 225. I understand Spivak's minus 225 because I think, you know, they're expecting him to go out there and just kind of roll over Oleinik. But again, Oleinik, time and time again, veteran in the game, takes advantage of stupid moves when it comes to the grappling, and next thing you know, he's on top of you, choking you out on something that you've never been choked out before. So with that being said, I'm gonna go Sergey Spivak just because if Oleinik gets knocked out in like a minute or something like that, it'll be unfortunate. I do think Spivak has to do this early on. I think he has to go for that KO TKO. Otherwise, you know, I'm a little bit concerned if Spivak gets tired or something. If, you know, old man Oleinik just comes in there and ends up in this weird grappling position. So I'm gonna go Sergey Spivak. I just think if he does this right, and he needs to do this right, because you can't be losing to a guy like Oleinik and then being like, yeah, I'm gonna rise through the ranks. So Spivak, if he wants to rise through the ranks, he wants to go into contendership or at least get more contenders, he's gotta be able to beat Oleinik, and he's got to be able to do it pretty dominantly. So I'm gonna go Sergey Spivak to defeat Alexei Oleinik by KO TKO in round number 1. But Oleinik is not one of those guys you want to necessarily bet against. So then we move on into the main event of the evening, and you have Chael Sonnen-Jung taking on Dan Ige. I think this will be a really great fight. Dan Ige is obviously one of these guys who's kind of on the come up. He's a little bit smaller for the division, in my opinion. When he fought Calvin Guitard was really keeping him on the end of the punches. He was kind of giving him a little bit difficulty. When you look at his last fight, Dan Ige was taking on Gavin Tucker, and he just went out there and knocked him out pretty badly. He just kind of stung him, really put him out. There isn't too much to that fight. I believe I actually had Gavin Tucker, which hindsight I have no idea why I took Gavin Tucker, but that was a weird one. He lost against Calvin Guitard before that by decision, and then he defeated Edson Barbosa by split decision, Mirsad Bektic by split decision. In fights where I feel like, especially against Mirsad Bektic, you know, he's able to defend the takedown, get his own takedowns. He's kind of likes to close the distance, get in tight, and start exchanging. He definitely has a good chin. He hasn't been knocked out in the UFC or anything like that. He's capable of going for the submissions. But like I said, you know, against a guy like Calvin Guitard, who's kind of bigger, longer, more lengthy, he was having a little trouble. And I think if you fight someone like Chael Sonnen-Jung, who, look at his last fight against Brian Ortega, he definitely got rocked a couple times in that fight, but, you know, he stayed in that fight for 5 rounds. He was able to hang in there. He landed some good shots here and there. He's more of a technical boxer kind of guy. Can he grapple? I think so. Maybe he tries to grapple in this fight a little bit. I don't know. But I would recommend Chael Sonnen-Jung, regardless if he's the zombie or not, to not go in there and just start, you know, throwing down with Dan Ige. I think Ige is definitely powerful, but I think if Jung fights a more technical fight, I'm not really concerned about either of these guys, you know, losing their cardio for 5 rounds. I think both guys are going to be able to go as long as neither one of them gets absolutely like teed off on early on. But Chael Sonnen-Jung, fight technical. Don't go in there and brawl. Try not to, you know, just get into that pocket range to where Ige can just start landing bombs on him maybe. But if Jung can kind of keep it technical, keep at the end of the punches, make it a little bit difficult to close that distance, I'm going to have to see Chael Sonnen-Jung in this fight, kind of picking him apart, being the more technical fighter. But obviously Dan Ige, you know, he's game. That's why it's minus 110 for both guys. Ige can definitely go in there, close that distance, and start piecing up Jung, possibly get a takedown or something. But maybe land some pretty big shots, because, I mean, regardless if it was against Gavin Tucker, Ige obviously has some power. So I'm interested to see where he looks in this fight and really get a more idea of how he looks against top level competition, because regardless if you think Chael Sonnen-Jung is one of these guys who's kind of on his way out, I still think that Chael Sonnen-Jung is definitely a veteran in the game, and he's fought the best of the best. So if you're knocking this guy out, you can definitely do some damage here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here, but I like Chael Sonnen-Jung on this one. I don't really think I don't know if anyone gets knocked out like that bad, because I think both guys might try to respect each other. I really don't see Chang Sung Jung getting slept like Gavin Tucker. He obviously could if he closes the distance and gets, you know, too aggressive or something like that. But I think Chang Sung Jung can just hang with Dan Ige with the technical striking, keep the distance, kind of light him up. It's going to be a great fight, though. I don't think it's going to be one of these fights where one guy looks absolutely bad in comparison to the other guy. So I'm going to go Chang Sung Jung on this one. I don't think he's done yet. He's fighting top level competition. You know, Dan Ige is definitely a great challenger and probably has a bright future ahead of him. But I think Chang Sung Jung still got a little bit in him. So I'll go Chang Sung Jung to defeat Dan Ige in the main event of the evening. And I'll take him to win by a decision. So that'll do it, guys, for my main and co-main event prediction for the upcoming event, UFC Vegas 29. Should be a sleeper kind of card. You know, obviously as a fighting fan, looking forward to it regardless if it has big names on it or not, especially that main event of the evening. And we'll see if any other crazy things happen throughout this card. But thank you guys. Hope you guys have a great Father's Day. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you want to. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.